My job as a photographer is to try and produce images which nobody else has produced. Tom Parker's original take on the world. Hi, I'm Tom Parker. I'm a photographer, and I'm delighted to be in conversation with Ellidore today. I started life actually working in the city of London. I had a brief experience there working at Bloomberg and a couple of the investment banks. It became quite clear quite quickly that wasn't the right path for me. I wanted to be a journalist, so I emailed some newspapers that I found online in Nepal, Vietnam, and China, I think, actually. I'd saved up some money from working in the city, and I just packed up and moved to Kathmandu. Before I went, I bought a camera. I bought a film camera, which I took with me with a couple of lenses. And then I spent the next year and a half attempting to be a bad journalist and then taking pictures as well. Fast forward December 2004, Boxing Day, Asian tsunami came, and I was getting lots of calls because I was on the ground to take photographs for publications, newspapers, magazines that were probably a lot bigger than my capabilities were at the time. That's where it all began, really. And then I gave up journalism and became a photographer full time. And subsequently, since then, which I guess is over 20 years ago, I've travelled to, I think nearly 90 countries and continuing to travel at a rapid rate as I can. So, I mean, one of the most interesting things for me about travelling is actually reintegrating back into where I'm from, which is London and Britain. And for me, that's often one of the most difficult things and surprising things about travel, is that I see where I'm from with fresh eyes. And that integration for me is quite tough because I've often come from exotic places which doing very interesting, exciting things. And I come back to, quite a sedate existence here, where I'm quite habitual. In terms of preparation, I will do some research. I think for me to go in somewhere with really fresh eyes, I almost don't want to know too much. I want to be able to interpret the place that I'm going without any kind of preconceived ideas. And for me, this is really important. And what always surprises me is that however well prepared I am before a shoot, or however well prepared I am to visit a country, every time I'm proved wrong. Everything I'm doing as a photographer is live. Everything I'm doing is reacting from second to second, from moment to moment. I have to be alert the whole time. I have to see what's happening kind of the corner of my eye. I have to see what that person's doing, what they're doing with their hands, where that person's looking. You feel alive when you're a photographer. You feel like you're kind of the conductor, and you're kind of directing the world, and you're creating what goes in that frame. My brand has 4 attributes. My ideal brand. My great photographs are bold, they're confident, they're controversial, and my method of achieving them is often via humour. So I think in that, my best photographs that will contain all 4 of those attributes. It's funny, like when you start analysing your work, you realise how few of your photographs actually have all those attributes. And then you start becoming hypercritical of your own work. And you kind of go in this weird cycle of loving your work, not liking your work, loving it again, and then kind of being fair with it. My best photography is bold, for sure. I think compositionally it's bold. I think there's a degree of structure in it, I think, which is quite a male gaze, but I see the world very geometrically. I try and make one subject the subject of the picture. That's what you're looking at. You're not looking at anything else. That's what you're looking at. So I think probably a lot of my projects, I am, as I'm sure a lot of photographers are, but I'm naturally drawn to places which are bold, people which are bold, extraordinary landscapes, people doing extraordinary things in extraordinary landscapes. Fundamentally, a lot of people can take a good photograph. You just you're just kind of framing something in, four sides. But I think the skill that you really get from experience is working out how you get in a situation to get that photograph, where, when, and how you set that up. One of the things you got to think about as a photographer is kind of the debate in your own mind about whether to take a picture of somebody without asking their permission or not. The ethics of taking pictures of people. I mean, it's a broad subject, and it depends on what kind of photography you're talking about. I have to make a judgment call, and often it's a split second decision. Do I shoot from the hip? Do I put it on silent mode, which obviously you can do with digital cameras now? Do they have the right to know that I've taken their picture? So there's a lot of kind of different things to think about. And if you're taking a picture of somebody without asking their permission, if you do it confidently, they're probably going to be up for it. If you do it nervously, they probably won't. So I think it's all about your approach. But to get in that mindset where you feel like that it's not easy. And sometimes you're in the mood, sometimes you're not, because sometimes you can be walking into somewhere which is quite threatening, somewhere which is potentially quite dangerous, somewhere where just you might offend somebody where they don't want to have their picture taken. I've just come back from South Sudan, and somewhere like South Sudan, which is it's the poorest country in the world, I had some real ethical dilemmas shooting there. The level of poverty and trauma in some of the places we went, I thought very, very long and hard about how I approached that on multiple levels. Firstly, there's people who don't like having their picture taken, and that comes from a lot of historical reasons and also cultural and colonial reasons, I believe. But also, me walking into a country which I'm going to leave in 1 week, what right do I have to go in, take a photograph of somebody who's, been through some very traumatic experiences, take their photograph and then leave with it, and then show it to a Western audience. I guess I had business going there if I in some way was offering some assistance or help. My work hopefully will raise money which will allow for some kind of assistance, but I'm so far removed from it often, I felt deeply uncomfortable. And actually this was one of the things after the Asian tsunami, because I spent a year shooting in and around different locations. I think being around so much suffering and trauma, and it was really tough, and I really felt like this is, I've got to be helping people here, and me taking their picture is quite a remote and distant and tenuous link to actually physically helping people, So that's something which I'm very, very conscious of wherever I go. And I think increasingly so photographers are challenging themselves as to really consider more deeply about what they're doing. Unless I know it's a world beater, I will probably shy away. But this comes back to one really important point, is how do you get in the zone? How do you get in that mindset where you're happy to walk into any situation? It's quite fascinating when you look back on, say, a week's shoot, and you look back at what moments was I kind of alive? What moments was I properly seeing the world? And it's very few. It's very, very few moments. For me to get into the zone, and this is one of the great advantages of digital, I find, I'll just start taking pictures. Often you get somewhere and you think, there's no pictures here. This is terrible. This is rubbish. And I will, the first half of the day might be complete rubbish. For me, I just need to keep on battling. I know a lot of people don't work like this, but for me, it's a time thing. Slowly, as I start looking for pictures, really start trying to dig as deep as I can, the pictures will suddenly emerge. Do I have a obligation to represent reality truthfully? It's a very good question. I have an obligation not to misrepresent reality, but I don't think I have a obligation to represent it in in a truth, in a very realistic form, because it's my job to interpret reality in a way. And I guess it's maybe more of the job of the photojournalist is to represent a wider scene. And I don't like shooting wide angle generally. I think that shooting wide angle for me doesn't hone my skills on working out what the photograph is. So for me, if there's a scene, my skill as a photographer is to work out what element of that scene is the photograph. I shoot a lot of landscapes with a zoom, with a big zoom, because I want to be tight in on that. I want to tell the story of that particular part of the landscape. So you might argue I'm not representing reality because you're not getting the whole context of it. So no, I don't think there's an obligation. I think part of the art is not representing reality. So in terms of AI, so I think there was a lot of hoo-ha when it first came out. Everyone was amazed at what it could do, and obviously it is amazing. And I think there was a lot of fear about photography and about how it's going to take our work, etc., etc. With AI, I think we need to embrace it. In most photo software now, basically Photoshop, all the Adobe applications, they're introducing strong elements of AI. And I think that's fantastic. It's going to make our life easier. It's going to save us time in terms of retouching. In principle, it's going to allow us to be more creative. So I'm excited about what AI is going to do for photography, and I think a lot of the fear has gone from the industry as well. So when I'm not thinking about photography or I'm not taking pictures, I try and do non-photographic things. So I love being on a train. I love seeing the world go by. I think there's something that kind of freezes your life and allows you to think somehow kind of objectively about the world and yourself. On planes, I like also that transitory feeling where you're nowhere and somehow you can see both where you're from and where you're going with clarity. I like to do things where there aren't many people around, and for me that's kind of the essence of luxury in a way, is doing something where it feels like a genuine first-hand experience. Experience extraordinary means doing something which either hasn't been done before or doing something which has been done before but doing it in a completely new and unique way.